Welcome to another edition of Market Impact Insights, your podcast source for business leadership perspectives to help your business grow. Hear from experts in marketing, sales, business strategy, and more, with practical advice for business success. Make sure you won't miss the latest episodes by visiting marketimpactnow.com. Now, here's your host, Dan Albaum.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of Market Impact Insights. You know, the positive feedback continues to come in for my new book, The Giving Edge. Thank you for that. And I'm hearing stories of being inspired by really the real life experiences of these 37 remarkable humans that have made the conscious choice to bring a giving mindset every day and the exponential returns that they're getting in business and life. And that's so appropriate because our conversation today is with someone who is literally bringing that giving mindset in helping others be more successful in business and life. And that's David Fung. And David is the founder and executive coach at Coachful Coaching. And I love this tagline he's got for this. It's bring joy to your hustle. And couldn't we all use a little bit more joy in a world that is filled with so many uncertainties and fast-moving changes and stress? And if we could, as leaders, bring more joy into the work that we do, it's just going to radiate, and we'll get into all this. How does that elevate and lift the performance of your teams? Now, David has a really interesting background into his coaching business. He's a former senior director at Salesforce. So he's worked inside of large global scale businesses, 23 years of leadership experience, and he's worked within Fortune 500 companies, but also startups. He's led teams of all sizes, small agile groups or large, diverse, multi-generational teams. And here's the important thing: in driving results, double-digit annual growth in as much as an $800 million business. And in all of his experience, in all of the work to hire and develop top talent and navigating the organizational politics, it's always come back to just making teams and people reach their full potential. So I can't wait to get into a leadership conversation with David Fung. Welcome to Market Impact Insights.
Dan, thank you very much for having me today. How's it going?
It's going great. It's beautiful. The sun is out. And we're going to get into something that I know you're really passionate about. But before we talk leadership and your perspective, let's go back, because you've had this interesting pivot, really, in terms of your career. And so, but technology has really been the one common thread through that. What originally sparked a focus to get into this whole area of technology and innovation?
Yeah, well, I've been in tech in one shape or another for 23 plus years. Most recently as a senior director at Salesforce, and I tell you, I initially did not start off as a technologist, Dan. I was a science student. I did chemistry. I did a master's degree in computational chemistry. It doesn't get nerdier than that, right? But little did I know, also in the field of computational chemistry, where you apply nerdy algorithms to solving molecular problems, it was we were doing AI before AI was even cool, and so it set me up well for where we are right now. But you know what? I realized, like many people, you transition as you work through your career. Man, I love where technology and humans meet. There was something about it and what we could do with it, and I never looked back. The early 2010s, I moved from the scientific software world to pure tech, and I had the privilege of riding that wave for the last 15 years. That wave of high growth, growth at all costs in some ways, right? But my God, it was fun. It was super fun. I was hiring 5, 6, 7 people per quarter at one point, and we had hiring quotas. The bonuses we were giving out were absolutely ridiculous. It was capitalism at its max. And again, what a privilege for me to experience that.
For sure. And now you're doing something very different, but you're drawing on that experience. But when you reflect back on your journey from tech into now your coaching work, what's been some of your biggest learning? And have there been surprises for you along the way?
Yeah. Well, look, the reason why I became an executive coach is because just really spending time as a leader and at Salesforce, one of the things that really taught me was that the best leaders I worked with, my tagline is bring joy to your hustle. But the way I brought joy to my teams, and I bring joy to teams today, Dan, it's not through happy hours. It's not through cupcakes and birthdays and, birthday cakes. All that is important, right? But what I realize is the best leaders know what's most important at the moment. They are astute, they protect their teams, and they lead through something I like to call leading through subtraction. It's by taking away the noise, taking away what does not matter, so you clear the way for your teams to innovate and to succeed. And that's something I coach people on right now, how to take things away, not add more things.
Yeah, I wrote down 2 words while you were talking, David. Situational awareness, AKA read the room. And that's so foundational. Easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, look, I worked with a to all my former coworkers who might be listening to this. I worked with a lot of people who worked on the commercial sales side of things. Let's just say sales attracts a certain archetype of individual. One of them is extreme confidence to the point of narcissism. That's the spectrum. But look, situational awareness. It's understanding you're not the most important person, right? Mm-hmm. At least suspending your ego for that moment and trying to understand what's in it for the other person, what's in it for others. That's for the moment. But when you start running your life and running your leadership operating system in that way, when you start looking at things from the perspective of how do I serve others, you start to see things more clearly. You see the broader picture. And, believe it or not, you have more purpose in your life and in your work. And that's part of the joy, bringing joy to your hustle, right? It's not about you. When you make it not about you, you start bringing more joy into your life.
I love that because you're really getting into this realm of something I've been advocating for quite a while, and that's servant leadership, which is all about thinking of team and putting others first. It's tied to giving mindset, all this good stuff. And something that I know you're also a big advocate for is leading with honesty, not just authority. What's that all about?
Look, I'm pretty sure you've had many folks on this podcast talk about it and variations of it. But let's put it this way. I have a lot of isms, by the way, Dan. Right?
We could all use a few more isms in our life.
It's how I codify things I learn, and I use it. I codify it, and I'm like, oh, it's this. And that's how I teach myself, and how I teach others as well. But there's a catchy line I like to use when I'm coaching leaders. It's lead with your weakness. Now that catches a lot of people's attention because when you hear lead with weakness, how's that work? Well, I'm not telling you to be weak. What I'm suggesting and inviting you to think about is leading with what you don't know and being honest with what you don't know. Because if you want your team to be honest with you, you need to be honest with them. Mm-hmm. If you want to be able to influence your team, you need to allow them to influence you as well. It's it is this give and take in life. Like this is not restricted to leadership. This is a dynamic of between humans. If you and I are going to work with each other, even for this brief period of time in the podcast, you give me something, I got to give something back, right? And if I give you honesty, I hope for honesty back as well. And that is what leading with your weakness actually is. And like I can tell you, like 3 years ago, in my when I was at Salesforce, I had to lead. My team we were depleted by 20% of my team was let go through a mass layoff. Like 10,000 people in the company were laid off. And so it's one of those fear moments. And I honestly, the day of the layoffs, Dan, the first thing I said was, hey folks, I'm a little bit scared and I'm actually very pissed off. And I'm sure you are as well. And that was one of the truth moments that I let people know, was that I'm both scared and pissed off, because I can tell you a lot of my team members were feeling both at the same time. But that's how you got to lead, honestly. And if you give that truth and that honesty, they will return that favor to you as well.
Yeah, there's a definite vulnerability when we as a leader are transparent and we open up and we share our true feelings and we share our imperfections. I've seen so many, as I'm sure you have too, people that fall into the trap of believing that they need to reinforce that they're the smartest person in the room at all times, because they're clinging to this perception of leadership value hinging on being the one, the source, the idea source, the magic behind everything, when in fact they're missing out the bigger opportunity, which is if you can be a catalyst and a motivator and a lifter of the other talent that you've got in that room, now you're multiplying your effect as a leader, and it's not just about you. So you brought it right back home. And I think the layoff situation that we can all relate to, either whatever side you're on, if you're delivering that news or you're receiving the news, that's a tough, emotional, human experience, and you're acknowledging it.
Yeah. And you have to acknowledge it. People have families to take care of, mortgages to pay, health bills to pay, parents to take care of. This is not a blip. Many of these folks were out of work for over a year. Anyone listening, if you have a young family and you have a mortgage, imagining, and you're the sole breadwinner, imagine being out of work for a year. It's tough. It's tough for people, right? It's tough for families. And that's the thing we you got to remind ourselves. I was talking to this one leader just before I jumped on this podcast, and we were talking about how one of their values of spirituality show up at work. And, when you think spirituality, you're like, oh, is it about doing prayers? Is it about talking about God? But we got into a conversation, and what this leader realized, Dan, was that how their spirituality shows up for them as a leader, it shows up because they treat people as a fundamental good human being. No matter who that person is, they treat them as a good human being with good intents. They might have had a tough childhood, a tough week, or a tough day, but they're fundamentally good people. And I think that's the thing we need to remember, is that behind every person that you might not like working with at work, there is a father, a mother, a brother who has a lot of stresses in their life. And it's remembering that. And that's, how do you bring more joy? Well, again, it's not about you. It's not about you.
Yeah. And I know you also focus a lot of your time and effort working with leaders on bringing more clarity and influence into their organizations. And I think we all can relate that any sustaining and growing company benefits from having a crystal clear vision, a sense of purpose you talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But we've probably also seen examples where if that's fuzzy and there isn't a easy to understand consistently and understood across the organization in the same way, that vision starts becoming more of an impediment, rather than really a powerful driver. So what is the fine line that you see that leaders should be walking between truly visionary and avoiding being confusing to their teams?
Yeah. So I'll give you a solid example of visionary and being confusing. Just maybe like 3 years ago, right? 4 years ago, almost no one heard of Anthropic. No one heard of OpenAI, right? And back then, like I took some leadership courses back in that time, and one of the first things they teach you as a leader, Dan, is one of the main jobs as a leader is to shield your team from all the garbage, help your team focus, right? Help filter the ideas that are coming from above, filter all the ideas that are coming from your brain so that your team can focus. But it seems like over the last 18 to 24 months, with AI all over the news, agentic this, agentic that, that rule book in organizations, that rule book of leadership, of filtering things before they hit your team, it seems like that rule book just went out the window. I talked to leaders from both my previous workplace and other adjacent companies. What they're telling me is right now they are just overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed with over enablement, over campaigning, over project after project, changing the roadmaps of the product. It is just absolutely nuts. And one of the compounding problems is that as the world changes, as the news change about AI and how it influences things, there's this pressure that every leader is feeling to like just drop these ideas and get their teams to execute, right? Like I was talking to a leadership team a couple months ago, and we're talking about all these initiatives, and it had nothing to do with AI. And suddenly one of the GM in the room said, "Oh, and we need to do more with AI." And out came like this tangent, and everyone just went on a tangent talking about all these things. And it was like I put it to a stop. By the way, I just said, "Hold on, folks. You're treating AI like it's this separate thing, and they're going down this rabbit hole. They're creating more work. How about we think about AI in terms of, these 6 projects you talked about? Where does AI fit in to these 6 projects that we just talked about?" So it's reframing, right? Reframing about all these ideas about AI. So here's my point. AI is a new tool, right? AI is a new tool, but you cannot be dropping every new idea about AI, Claude, Anthropic, OpenAI. You can't be dropping these on your team. You got to filter. You got to continue to filter. And that is what I am telling teams right now, is that even more importantly, you need to turn on this idea filter before it hits your team, especially now. So yeah, AI overwhelm, AI exhaustion. That is what companies are going through right now.
Absolutely. And I think another phenomenon that I've seen out there is that there can be a mistaken belief that just by bringing an AI solution into an organization, that it will automatically and magically solve existing broken processes. And when in fact, this has been proven out. I think there's been a lot of high profile situations where this has been the case. if you don't first do the hard work to identify and fix your broken process, introducing AI can actually exponentially make that broken process even worse, not fix it. So it's getting the right context of how to incorporate AI in its proper role within your organization.
Yeah, yeah. I was at this conference a few weeks ago with software development leaders, and one of the stats they produced was that through AI agents, they are doubling, even tripling in some of these organizations, doubling their output of code. But you know what else is doubling and tripling? The amount of errors being produced. So, wow. And they're not shipping any faster. These companies that are software companies, they are not shipping code any faster. They have more code being produced in less time, but also they have more errors in less time. And what the bottleneck is having enough humans, not agents, not AI agents, but enough humans to validate the legitimacy of what's being produced by AI. That is the reality of what's happening on the ground right now. So yeah, automating a bad process just means you have a bad process that gets bad even faster.
So another thing that's really important in all of this in terms of how teams work together and how effective they are and what kind of results they can produce is focus and prioritization. And we know that can be really hard, and certainly in bigger, complex organizations, but even in small business as well, just making the tough choices and prioritizing. Why do you think it's so hard? And how can we really get our teams then to be more proactive in the right way?
Yeah, there's a 3-pillar filter I ask leaders to apply to any new idea that comes across their desk. It's very simple, but it's hard to do. The three pillars are: number one, if you have a new idea across your desk, Dan, number one is wait. Wait 24 hours, wait 48 hours, even 72 hours before you do anything with that idea. Because I guarantee you, most ideas that come across your desk, what you're going to find within the first 24 hours is that it doesn't align with the goals of your team and the mandate of your team. It's fluff. That's gate number one. Number two is that if you, after the 48 hours and you wait and you realize, okay, there's something here, it might align, but I don't know how to prioritize this. The second step is what needs to go. I call that trade. So what needs to go? If my team takes on this new idea or initiative, what's the trade-off? Because something's got to come off the plate. And if you say nothing can come off the plate, then maybe you shouldn't take on this new idea. So the trade. Then the last thing, and one of the most important things every single leader listening to this podcast should have, the third filter is you need to designate a naysayer. If this idea passes those first two gates, go to your naysayer, someone designated on your team who can say no to you without any consequences, and run it by them. Let them just crap all over your idea. But listen to them. Listen to what they have to say. Now, this has got to be someone you trust, someone you respect, obviously, right? Not just, the grumpy person. But if it passes those all three of those gates, maybe, and I say maybe, you have something that your team should start pursuing. And these three things, wait, trade, and designate a naysayer, is so simple in theory. But organizations are running so fast and so hard. And I get it. But you need to stop and wait. You need to wait. It is so counterintuitive to a capitalistic society. But the value of waiting is more focus for your team.
Yeah, it's really about being more disciplined and patient. And of course, that's really hard, especially in startup land with the pressure and expectations of everything happening at 1,000 miles an hour speed. And, the 48 hours, I've seen stories of startup CEOs that want it all happening in 24 or 48 minutes, let alone a couple of days. So you're kind of, again, as a leader, if you're in that kind of culture or organization of just rapid fire, let's do it, it takes some courage to bring that discipline and say, hold on a minute, there may be a different way to do this. So we are talking about courageous acts to be principled and really bring this discipline, right?
Yeah. And I especially when I talk to startup founders, they're, they'll say things like, well, Dave, I have stand-up meetings every single day, and every stand-up meeting is like a strategy review, because we're going to have to review the strategy almost every day and rethink it. Yeah, I get it, as you should, right? But did you think through all the ramifications, all the consequences before you're getting your team to act on these things? Because if you're not, and if it's just a feeling, you're not doing your job as a leader, startup or not, right? So as you said, the discipline, even especially in a startup environment, especially in an environment where you're competitive and your competitor, all it takes is, your competitor to be focused on 5 really important things, and you are getting your team to do 50 unimportant things. Guess who's going to win? It's that competitor who's more focused on the right things, not running around, doing all these other things. So that's focus. That is so hard for many leaders.
So, David, what are some other things you think separate truly exceptional leadership from just good enough?
The best leaders I've worked with know themselves better than anyone else. And I mean, they've done the inner work to understand their tendencies, and they keep iterating on challenging their beliefs about themselves and about others. It's that, I guess in a nutshell, it's self-awareness. Those are the best leaders. And self-awareness is a constantly evolving thing. And where it really counts, and when it really counts, is when you are in high pressure, reactive, very, just very fast moving environments. That's where self-awareness needs to show up the most. But that's what separates great leaders from okay leaders.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the importance of leading with honesty, but in this case, it's about turning inward and being honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's got to start there. That's foundational.
It's got to start there. It's got to start there. The honesty with yourself about how you're leading. Look, I've talked to leaders who say, yeah, I want honest conversations. I want people to challenge each other. What they're really creating in that environment, I've been in many environments like that. We need to all challenge each other. It's actually a psychologically unsafe environment. It's about blaming people, provoking people, versus being curious about what others are doing, right? Honesty doesn't mean you have to be an a-hole. Honesty means you need to approach things with kindness and curiosity.
Yes. Yeah, those are huge. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
This too shall pass. This, no matter how hard something is, it's going to end. It will end one way or another. And because of that, the second part of that was, one of my early business coaches basically said to me, Dave, when things are good and you succeed, don't take those highs too high. But when things don't go your way, don't take those lows too low. Be somewhere in the middle, right? because this too shall pass. Even the good stuff, right? What's most important is to experience where you are right now and truly enjoy the work that it takes to get to that destination. Whether it works out or not, you got to enjoy what you're doing to get there. The grind. You got to enjoy that grind, right? I think the old saying is, enjoy the journey, right? It's true. You got to enjoy the things you're doing to get there, not the actual destination.
Yeah, and when I think about moments in my own life when maybe I've fallen short of a goal or objective, and what has helped me not stay dwelling on looking backward, but trying to look forward, is just focus on the learning to take from that experience. Don't focus on the event itself, the thing that happened or the things that unexpectedly got in your way. And maybe there's all sorts of reasons. Don't focus on assigning blame. Don't focus on the event. Focus on what can I take from that is going to make me better each step of the way. And it seems like when you rechannel that focus in that way, then it's easier to let it go and move on.
Yeah. In my early days when I was working on some, I was a sales engineer for some deals, and there's one deal I was working on. It was, I just knew that it was a bad situation with the customer. We had to, give our best shot at it, but I was kind of sulking in the corner there in my cubicle, and kind of like, oh man, am I wasting my time here? I'm working so hard. This deal might not even happen. And one of the senior guys just came up to me. He's like, Dave, what's the worst thing that could happen here? I'm like, well, we lose the deal. Okay, but what do you gain whether you win or lose the deal? I go, what? He's like, look at all the things you did in order to prepare for this deal. You've learned so much. You've actually learned more than any of us here in some of the, the tricks that we, for demonstrating, for building the technology. You learn more than most of us. You're coming out of this deal knowing more than you did before. That is what you're coming out with. And that's a reframe that I still use to this day. So even if a deal or a project looks terrible, I think, wait, worst case, I'm coming out with some really good learnings that I can use to win the next deal. And it's helped me put things in perspective.
Mm-hmm. Great example. And obviously we're in some unprecedented times, just a lot of dynamics at work, from emerging technology like AI to hyper-competitive marketplace and the pressure that we're all feeling as leaders. But when you look ahead and you think about the future, David, what makes you optimistic?
What makes me optimistic is that, when I look at my own children, when I meet some of these younger folks who are entering the workforce right now, their emotional intelligence is very high. Their ability to critically think about situations with people, with projects, with technology, it's extremely high caliber. And what makes me optimistic about why that makes me optimistic is that, look, AI is just yet another tool. It's going to help us. We don't know how yet, right? Just like we didn't understand how electricity was going to have such a profound effect on society, right? The thing that is enduring is human judgment, human critical thinking, and human connection. And that makes me optimistic, because what I'm seeing now is that the younger folks, they haven't lost any of that. If anything, they're probably better than me, than my generation. They're more self-aware than when I came into the workforce, talking about self-awareness. That makes me optimistic, Dan. It's not going to be a bunch of robots ruling over us. I think it's going to be humans that are going to shape how these AI tools will conform to how we do business and how we relate to each other.
Yeah, let's double down on humanity, right, with our bet. I love that. And as we wrap up the conversation, David, do you have any other final advice for leaders and how they can create more positive impact, especially in this AI world, and elevate the performance of their teams?
Think critically at what. Think critically, and when I say think critically, I mean think of what you can subtract. So it's how you approach art, right? In the Western world, how a Western artist of the past, they used to see an empty canvas, and they think about what can you add to this canvas? What paints? What colors? What can I do to this canvas? But if you go to the traditional Eastern world of creating art, they think of like a big chunk of rock, and what do I need to take away from this rock in order to reveal the art, the statue that is underneath. And that's the way I like to think about things, is what do we need to take away so that the beauty of our team and their abilities start to show in this chunk of rock. What can you take away?
David, thanks again for sharing your fascinating journey from being a leader in a large global tech organization. And now you're coaching, you're helping so many leaders be able to be more self-aware and be more situationally aware and elevate the performance and the impact of their teams, and also reminding us not to forget about the power of subtraction. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, I enjoyed it as well, Dan. Thank you very much for having me today.
And a reminder, please continue to give the gift of feedback to help make this podcast even better. You can do that by going out and giving a rating and a review. It's so easy to do on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And as always, make sure to visit marketimpactnow.com for the latest in business leadership perspectives. So long until next time.